So thank you so much for joining virtually for International Women's Day. Would you like to introduce yourself for those who wouldn't know who you are already?
Um, yes, thank you, Bella. My name's Shani Latif, a sales director at Telent Technology Services and also non-executive director for Cyro Cyber.
Perfect, thank you. So for International Women's Day, I've been speaking to Infinigate partners and just catching up about their advice, especially when, senior within this industry as a female, what advice they could give. So I've got a few questions and I'd love to get your answers on them. So the first question is, how did you get into the IT industry?
Well, it was completely accidental for me, Bella. I actually wasn't planning on getting into the IT industry at all. I went to a girls' grammar school locally, and I was very good in the sciences. So the typical career path for me would have been medicine or dentistry. But after a short stint in a hospital, I decided that it wasn't the environment I wanted to be in on a daily basis. And therefore, having no idea what to do, I spoke to a friend who suggested a degree in computing science. So after doing A levels in biology, chemistry, and psychology, I was stunned and a little bit shocked going into a degree with regards to computer science. But actually, it wasn't until I went out into the industry and got a role with a local small startup doing some telemarketing for them that I really sort of understood what was going on in the industry and really felt like I could understand customers' challenges and support with solutions for those challenges as well.
I feel like a lot of us, I've spoken to quite a few women during this series, and a lot of us just fall into this industry. I feel like there's not really ever a time we're like, oh, do you know what? I would consider this industry to get into. I feel like most of us fall into it and just stick with it because, we fall in love with how technology is always evolving. So I completely understand that. So has there ever been a time where you've doubted yourself, and how did you combat that?
Um, at the beginning, when I started my career, I wasn't planning on staying in sales. I'd hoped to go into consultancy or more of a technical role, actually.
Yeah.
But having got into it, I was found that I was actually quite good at solutionizing, working with customers, and providing sort of end user services that were acceptable to them. And however, making that jump from sort of being at the desk and going out into the field was a real sort of interesting period because it's a big jump moving
Yeah.
from sort of internal to external. So I doubted myself there, but actually, after the first month or so, going out, seeing customers and really understanding where the future of technology was going to be for them and planning that roadmap for them and that strategy was really clear. And I had success very early on with some large customers in the first 6 months. So that sort of really helped with the imposter syndrome. But it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop in sort of at the start of your journey, in every aspect of sort of moving up a level. And I think this is normal for both men and women when they start
Absolutely.
a different part of their journey. Recently, in November, I went on a pilgrimage and I decided to cover my head and wear a headscarf. Now, I've never done that before, and so the industry has known me as Shani Latif, from Telent or whatever, but not with my head covered. And actually, before I went on my pilgrimage, I was looking around to see if there were any women in the industry that were either from an ethnic minority or wore a headscarf, and actually, I couldn't find anyone out there that looked like me. So when coming back and sort of bringing my faith as well as being a woman, an ethnic woman, and then having a headscarf as well. Was a real sort of time where, especially in the first month or 6 weeks, again, I got my imposter syndrome. Not because I was starting something new, but I was changing in the way that the
It was like
industry
a
would
new
perceive
version of
me.
yourself.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a new version of myself, sort of bringing my soul and my faith into work. But actually, over time, again, um, it's something that means a lot to me, and it's something that's quite personal
Absolutely.
to me, and therefore, I've learned to sort of understand that actually this is me, and so the industry, needs more women that look different, and challenge stereotypes out there. And actually, I stand quite proudly when I walk into a conference and 95% of people are gentlemen, and some of them very nice gentlemen, and the rest of the 5% that are women, it's very rare that anyone, or I've never seen anyone that looks like me. So I stand proudly, actually, because I think about all the women that I will inspire that look like me or are from an ethnic background that want to get into this industry, especially in the commercial world, in the world of sales. It's not something that they would normally consider.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it's very important on the D&I front as well, that you're proud to go in and have that vulnerability, with your head covered, but yeah, you bring such a strength to it. So thank you for sharing that story. What achievement are you most proud of in your career?
So there's a number of achievements, and I think sometimes we look at the things that have gone well rather than the things that were difficult. So I've got two examples of that. There was one time within my sort of career where I had to deal with a really difficult situation. I'd started with a new company. I brought poor people along with me, but there was a difficult time. Difficult decisions had to be made. There was a direction that the business was changing in terms of where it was going, and therefore that meant redundancies, and it meant reshaping the business, working with our finance teams and our technical teams to reshape the size and the strategy of the business. And actually, during that time, that was quite early in my career. Not so early, maybe the middle of my career, but I'd only dealt with growth businesses. I'd never dealt with a situation where I was walking into something that was contracting to grow again. That was a real shocker for me, and it did affect. It had the spillover effect. So happened at work, but it would help. It's something that I took home with me, especially having to make redundancies and working with people in that manner. But actually, having worked through it, gone through the process and re-strategized and reshaped the business, we were in such a stronger position going into more market verticals, etc., and actually ended up growing the business and really sort of changing, pivoting it to something completely different. Another example was when I decided to take on the role of a divisional sort of P&L in an early part of my career, where I'd had lots of success as a sales manager, but had to sort of take on this division to grow it from zero to something. And I sort of took on staff, but technical, sales, operational, and we grew that business to give back, return £5.50 for every pound that was put into it. It was very successful and happy time in my life in terms of sort of growing a little startup to something that was multi-million. So and off the back of that, made some really good friendships working in that small sort of environment with people.
Yeah, I guess touching on how you have gone, you've said that you've obviously transitioned quite a few periods. What would you kind of hope that people would gain through your leadership style throughout those transitions and those who work within your team?
Yeah, I mean, all my bosses have taught me something, and my first boss, actually known well in the market, still around, taught me how to be ambitious. So we worked for a startup, and it was a small startup, less than £10 million, but actually we went for a tier one provider, and won a tier one provider, and therefore, and we really sort of pushed the business to grow in the last couple of years when I went into sales. So ambition is really important, and I think I always encourage my team to be ambitious, not unrealistically ambitious, but sort of being ambitious about where they can take their careers and how they can develop themselves, but also about their business and how they can do things better and more efficiently and effectively. I try and promote a culture of openness and collaboration. So part of that is being open myself and being collaborative myself as well, but leading with humility. So being able to say when I've made a mistake and put my hands up. And so one of my bosses is very human, very sort of humble, and that's helped me be more humble and take on more humility in my role, which in turn means that my team are much more honest with me as well in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. And as a leader, when you know your team's strengths and weaknesses, you can, as a leader, chip in and support them where they need that support, because everybody's very individual and requires a different level of handling. And finally, I guess doing all of that, sort of me taking the accountability for my team as well. So being very clear about what goals are, and ensuring that responsibility is taken by my team, but also I ultimately take that accountability on their behalf as well, and be a servant leader rather than sort of someone who just commands what needs to be done.
I guess on those values as well, do you wish that you had known any of those values sooner within your career, or is there something that you would take away that you wish you had known earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things, when you go into, especially into technology and into sales, there's a lot of bravado and egos and things like that out there. And I think actually one of the things that was just part of my personal values was always just getting my head down and getting the job done. And sales, thankfully, is very quantitative rather than qualitative. So the numbers speak for themselves. And therefore, in other areas where women are, it can be more difficult to stand out because your work doesn't always shine as much as when you're dealing with numbers or bringing in clients. So that was something that was really sort of useful to me, was being able to shine and be quantitative. But I didn't really have any structured mentors when I was going through my career. So although I had great relationships with my bosses, I didn't have anybody outside of work that had gone through what I was going through. So no mentors to talk to, no one to plan my career journey. I was fortunate that I had good people around me and I did well in my career. In the next sort of role was quite clear cut in terms of my transition. But if I could change one thing, it would have been to get a mentor earlier in my career. And also just a sort of a little note to my younger self would have been, I drove so hard at such a young age. So I started when I was 21, just graduated. I was a sales manager by the time I was 25, and looking after a division in P&L by the time I was 28. And so I pushed really, really hard. And I think what I would say is, easy to say now, but work smarter rather than harder. Don't drive yourself so hard. And it's easy to say that with the benefit of hindsight, actually, but having a mentor at the time would have really helped. And a sense of community. There wasn't really a community there for women beforehand, in sort of the early 2000s. There's much more of that available now.
Yeah, I guess as well, you summarised that really well. But what is the one piece of advice that you would give for young women starting out in the tech world?
I would say get involved with a community of women, whether that's coding, whether that's development, whether that's sales or technology. There's loads of women's technology, women's groups available in technology companies, but also outside of that. And reach out to women where you can see women who are doing the roles that you want to have in the future, or you think might be a direction that you want to go into. You'll be surprised at how much people want to support others. Certainly one of my values now is I've done well, I've achieved most of the things that I want to do. There's still lots of things on my list to achieve, but leaving the ladder down for other women that want to climb that ladder, and being an inspiration to them, and supporting them. So I run a Women in Technology Leadership membership for other women that are in similar positions to me out there, but we're a group of women that are always willing to support others with sort of climbing that ladder.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess out of interest for everyone who will be watching today would be, how have you progressed? You said from 25 you're a sales manager. What did that, what do you think was the driver for that, other than your dedication? You worked hard. What would you say was the key succession?
I guess working hard was part of my DNA and the foundation of my DNA. And working for a startup means you have to wear lots of different hats. So you've got to be the bid manager, the salesperson, and you've got to pick up lots of pieces where in a larger company, you have roles for those areas. You don't in a startup. So that was really good experience working in a startup and having to wear lots of different hats. So that's that's an area where I would definitely recommend going into, and working hard. Turning up with the cleaners in the morning and shutting down with the cleaners in the evening was part of my daily routine. But also, I feel sorry for some of the graduates and apprentices coming into roles now, because I had a lot of time in the office, sat next to the managing director or the CEO of the company, as well as all the other people that sort of were running that company, engineering, pre-sales, administration, operations, and hearing from them about how my role affected theirs and the intricacies of sort of working together, the nuances of working together, things that fell through the cracks, was really important in understanding the holistic part of running a business and making sure that you were handing over in the best way possible to others. So I think spending as much time with others, collaborating with others that might not necessarily be in your department, to get a holistic view of an organization. But also, I think one of the really key areas was understanding your customer and building that trust with a customer. Because for me, I'm proud to say that, the first 12 meetings I did in January 2006, when I started, externally in the field, were still the 12 customers that the company that I started off with, that sold 3 times, were still with that company at the time I left. And it's having that relationship with the customers, understanding them, and also knowing that when things go wrong, you'll always be there to pick up the phone and to see them through the future as well. So that's really important.
Yeah, Shani, thank you so much for your time. So I think it's been so valuable having you on. So thank you for joining today.
Welcome, anytime.